Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel, Pay Down Debt Solutions. As in anything new that you do, sometimes we are unsure if what we are doing is the right thing, okay? So today I want to talk with you guys about, just kind of troubleshooting velocity banking and problems that may arise and how to kind of work through and solve them. So on this channel, we teach velocity banking, and velocity banking is a way to bank where you're accelerating your payments, okay? You're accelerating paying off your payments. And this method of banking is something that I found and didn't know about as a branch manager and as a banker years ago, okay? So I come to you with the knowledge of being a branch manager, the knowledge of banking products, the knowledge of being a banker, and I worked with these products for many days, for many years. And I did not know the strategy that we're teaching you guys today. And why this strategy is important and why it makes a difference is because this strategy right here, working with velocity banking, got Dan and I out of a potential bad situation, right? So we are business owners. We've been business owners for many years, but we found ourselves payment poor and payment strapped, just like all of you guys out there are feeling today. And so what changed the trajectory of our lives is finding velocity banking. And those that know our story, I talk about this all the time. I say that we actually consulted with a bankruptcy attorney and we actually considered filing for bankruptcy when we didn't actually need to, okay? And so why I say we didn't need to is because velocity banking helped solve the problems that we have, or that we had, I should say. So the thing is, with all of you guys out there, if you are looking at your own personal situation and you think you might be headed towards bankruptcy, I want you to learn this strategy. I want you to take a deep dive into learning how to do velocity banking and learning the pay down strategy before you do that. Because I'm telling you, going into bankruptcy is probably one of the worst things that you can do. You do not want to tank your credit. We live in a credit society, and we need our credit in order to function. And it is that credit and those lines of credit that will get you out of your position that you are in right now, okay? And I have no doubt, because I come to you guys just from that situation myself, and Dan too, obviously, because we're a team, right? So today I want to troubleshoot with you some issues that crop up. And a lot of times, working with students with velocity banking, they get confused and they don't know if they're doing things right. They're not sure if they're calculating, interest right, or if they're working their strategy correctly. So I'm going to show you kind of, how to troubleshoot that and how to figure out if you're moving in the right direction or if you're moving in the wrong direction. And just so you guys know, we are here to help you. If you do need extra help and you can't figure out how to make that strategy work, I know you will figure it out on your own from watching videos. But if you don't, and if you can't, or you just feel like there's a piece you're not missing, please email us and let us know how we can help you. We absolutely will do that, okay? Again, you can email us at info@paydowndebtsolutions.com. That is how you can reach us. We are monitoring the email. Dan and I both monitor it all throughout the day. Even though we're working, on a multitude of things all the time, we're always paying attention to that email. So we will get back with you, okay? So today will be a short video. It's not going to be long, but I do want to go over some of the problems that we're seeing where students are getting kind of stuck, and I want to go over that with you. And I want to show you then a scenario too of a student who was running a 0% card, and she was working with velocity banking, but she had some interest, so she had some questions about that, okay? So how do I know that I'm doing velocity banking right? Well, are your numbers increasing or are they decreasing? Okay, that's the first thing that I'm going to say. But you're nervous, and I get it, right? Because you have not done this before, and neither did I. Man, when Dan and I sat down and worked our strategy and looked at it, our numbers were going all over the place. They were all in the wrong direction. We weren't sure if we were doing it right. So we had to sit down, we had to pull everything apart, and we had to go back to the basics, okay? And once we went back to the basics, we could then figure it out much easier. Sometimes that first look, just like you do anything for the first time you went and got your first job, you sucked at it, right? I bet you did, because a lot of people, they just don't know the ropes. You don't know the ropes, and right now you don't know the velocity banking ropes. So the more you get into this and the more you live it, right? Dan is classic for saying this. He says to students all the time, you're going to live this. Even though the numbers look like they're all over the place, right? They look like a mess and they don't make any sense. They make a little bit of sense, but not a lot of sense when you look at it. And yeah, your numbers are going down, but it looks overwhelming. Again, you're living it. Once you live it and you're inside of it, life just happens. And then you'll get your statement and you're going to go, oh, my numbers are decreasing. This is a good thing. Okay. And so that is the one thing that we will say is when you're living it, it doesn't feel messy. But when you first sit down and try to work it out, yeah, it's going to be a little messy for a few. Just like anything new, it takes a little bit of time to work it out and to figure it out. Okay. So how do you know if you're doing it right? And I know you're going to be nervous and you're not going to be sure of yourself, but you will get it. Keep watching videos then. You will get it. All right. Email us if you need to, but you're going to get it. So what if you do it wrong? So what? So what if you do it wrong? What if you work your numbers and they don't come out right? So what? Okay, so you redo it, right? So what if you're getting into your strategy and you're using your debt destroyer and you're using it for purchases and you're using it to live and you're using it for your bills and you get your statement and oh my gosh, that first statement goes in the wrong direction. Oh no, what now? Your first statement might. That first statement could go in the wrong direction because you weren't running it that way before, right? So the statement's going to look, it isn't going to probably come out right that first time you look at it. So it might not look right if you're going to look at that statement originally, okay? And so it takes probably a good month to get into it for it to catch up. So just be aware of that. That might be something that you see. And that isn't abnormal. That is okay if you do see that. So long as you truly are sticking to your numbers though. So if you aren't really sure of what you're spending monthly and you're doing velocity banking and then all of a sudden you get your statement, your numbers are going the wrong direction, but you're not sure of what you're spending, then that could be a problem. Okay. It might not be, but it could be. And so that is where you have to really understand and know your numbers. All right. So in problem solving, that's actually going to be the first thing we do, right? Is we go over your 3 steps first. So the pay down 3-step strategy. Organize, right? Organize, identify, and implement. Because most of the problems with velocity banking are actually found right here. All right. So you're going to find your problems typically in the 3 steps that you first lay out for yourself. All right. And you must account for all of your debits and all of your credits that are coming in and going out, right? Because if not, there's no way you're going to be accurate or, or even close, right? Now, we can't possibly be 100% accurate, right? Because things crop up. You're going to buy a little more this month or, buy a little less this month, or you're going to have a higher bill this month and a lower bill the next month. So it's going to be an average. And so that's the thing that I really want to stress with you guys is this is an average and it should be averaging out about somewhere in the realm, right, of what you're doing. So that should be making sense. All right. So if you sit down and you organize your bills, you organize all of what's coming in and all of what's going out. And people don't usually have a problem with what's coming in. It's what's going out of their accounts that they're having the problems with. And that makes sense, right? Because if you guys don't know what you're spending, then you're not going to know your numbers. So you really do need to pay attention, keep track of things really closely for a few months so that you have an idea of what you're doing. And then live it, live the plan. If it's working out, then live it. If it's not working out, maybe you need to curtail some things. Maybe you need to cut some things, right? And like I said, everybody who goes through the organized stage will find things that they're like, oh my gosh, I'm paying for this, and they cut it right out. Oh my gosh, I'm paying for what? I didn't even know we had that. So that happens all the time when people go through and organize their debts, right? So they're finding things that they can call and quit on right away. So you hopefully will, cut some of that, that fat, right? You're going to trim some of that fat along the way. All right. So once you then organize everything, number 2 is obviously identify, right? So you're going to identify not only your debt destroyer, the tool, that line of credit that you're going to use, but you're also going to be identifying your strategy. Now that strategy could be a few different things, right? It could be one debt destroyer that you're using and you're running everything through it, or it could be a multiple of them, right? It could be 2. Maybe you're using a home equity line of credit, but you want to purchase everything on your credit card because you get points. That's what I do. All right. So maybe that's what you're going to run. So that's fine. So long as you know how to account for all of that. Remember that home equity line is paying for everything and it's going to pay that credit card off monthly for you then, right? Because that would be your line of credit that you're using. Maybe you're using your one card. Maybe you're using one credit card as your debt destroyer, okay? Maybe you're using one card, but you have multiple cards, but yet you have to start with one, pay it down, and then work other cards. Or maybe you start with one debt destroyer and you rotate it and flip it then to the next card. And that one then becomes your debt destroyer. See, there's multiple ways to work this, and that is what's beautiful about our pay down strategy, okay? And what's beautiful about velocity banking is you have options and there's ways to get things done. So maybe you're going to use a split card strategy and you're going to run two at the same time. So maybe you do that. Now that you have to be very careful of too, right? Because if you're going to run the split card strategy, you have to make sure that the expenses that you're running on that, okay, number one, your income should be overtaking those expenses. And then the interest that's applied should not be more than the gap between the two, because then one of those cards is going to go the wrong way. And then you're going to have to rebalance it and refigure out, how you're going to run your expenses if you do the split card that way. But what you're going to be doing regardless is identifying that strategy that you're going to use. Maybe you're using the max card strategy. Maybe you're going to use one card. You're going to wait 6 months to a year because by then your score has gone up, your credit score has gone up, and then you're going to apply for either a 0% card or maybe you're going to try for a personal line of credit at that point. So there's multiple ways to skin this cat, right? And that's what's so great. All right, and 3 is obviously running your strategy, working your strategy down. It's while you're in it. This is the living in it part that Dan talks about, okay? So this is what you do. When you're implementing that strategy, you are living it. It just becomes what you do. It just becomes habit. And anything that becomes a habit is easy over time, right? So again, as long as you're paying attention, you're looking at your statements, you're making sure you're not, going in the wrong direction, then you should be okay, all right? But again, in problem solving, usually the first problem is in the beginning stages when you're organizing, you're identifying, and you're implementing. So if you go back over that, you're probably going to find your solution and fix it, okay? So we can obviously only be as accurate as the sheet you fill out. Just like, you guys, when you're filling out your sheet, if you are not honest with yourself or if you don't include every single bill that you have, you're never going to work it right. It's just not going to come out, okay? Just like when people send us their sheets and they want us, to work magic for them, we do a lot of times, but sometimes they don't put everything on the sheet, so there's emails that go back and forth, right? A few times before we get it all together and get it right. And that's okay too. But as long as you guys, the best you fill it out, the most accurate you can be, the better off you're going to be, all right? And if anybody wants our sheets, just email us and we'll send them to you. I have no problem with that, okay? We'll send you the sheets, whether you want us to work with you or not, no problem. I'll still send you the sheets, okay? All right, so if you forget items, obviously your numbers then change, right? So your expenses can sometimes vary up or down depending on life happenings, right? So what life happenings will happen, and don't let that derail you though. So if you have a month where your expenses are more, that's okay. It's just going to, lengthen maybe some of the time that you're in your strategy. That could happen. But you know what? On the flip side of that, you might have a month where you get a little extra cash or you don't spend as much money, and then you're pushing ahead a little bit, so that works too. That's great too, okay? So it just depends. I actually did that over Christmas. Christmas derailed me some. I wouldn't say it derailed me, but I spent way more than I intended to, right? So I got my statement and I was like, are you kidding me right now? That was on me, all right? That was on me. I wanted to give everybody a good Christmas. Sometimes I'm too generous with things, but then it hurts me in the long run. But I know that, right? I know that about myself. So I have to, I have to take that one and chalk it up to, all right, my fault here. All right, so number 2, rework your numbers. Sometimes it's just a mathematical mistake that you make. Sometimes you just have to rework your numbers and take another look at them, or maybe you're not calculating the strategy correctly, right? So maybe you're forgetting to take out a payment that would be due, but it's not anymore, right? Because you're using that as your debt destroyer. And so you have to remember, when you use that as your debt destroyer, that then comes back to you either you decrease it from your expenses or you're adding it back into your income. And that's going to depend on whether you're using whether you're using a card or a line of credit, such as a personal line of credit or a home equity line of credit that you're running all your expenses through. You're all of your income through and your expenses, actually both. So that will vary a little bit. And so you might just be calculating it wrong. And sometimes that happens. And if you get stuck, We're here to help you. We've got a ton of videos out there for you, all right? Okay, so again, simple math mistakes can cause your numbers to not work, all right? So that does happen. And if it doesn't work, obviously you're going to be showing increasing values, and increasing values are not right, okay? So that's not good. That means something isn't working. Either the strategy won't work for you because you just can't make it work, your numbers can't make it work, or you're just mathing it wrong, okay? That happens. Okay, so 3, revamp your strategy. So if you truly know this isn't going to work, okay, the strategy that you picked isn't going to work because you're pretty sure you're doing it right, revamp it, change it, make it different, right? Maybe you have to go into more of a maxed card strategy because you don't have any lines of credit to work with. You're trying to make cards work and you just can't. So now you're going to have to make one your debt destroyer, and you're going to have to work that one card down, which means that one payment is going to come back to you for income. And that's it. And that's okay, because you will be working that down so long as you adhere to your own plan, okay? And you don't overspend every single month. That will work. And it does work. I've seen it over and over and over again. We lived it, you guys. We lived that, okay? All right, so I'm going to give you an example too on, how these numbers look and how they work, okay? And so what happens is, right? So let's say you have a card, okay, and it has a $3,000 balance, all right? And let's say your income is $1,500 that you can put on this card, all right? So the income's $1,500. Card's at a 29% interest rate. So let's say the expenses that you have to run on this card are $1,450, so $1,450. And you calculate your interest at 29%. Now, let's calculate that for you. Let's do that again so that I can make sure that I'm really clear on how to calculate your interest. You are going to take your high balance and you're going to take your low balance. You're going to add them together. So 3,000 plus 100 or 1,500 is 4,500. Okay, so 3,000 plus 1,500, 4,500. You then divide that by 2 to get your average. Okay. So divided by 2 equals 2,250. So that's the average of that for the month, okay? High balance, low balance. Now, we know that our interest rate at this point is 29%. So we have to multiply 2,250 by 0.29, okay? So that 0.29, we turn the 29% into a decimal, so that we have to multiply it by 0.29. That gives us $653 for one entire year, okay? That is a year's worth of interest. Now, we take that 653 and we're dividing it by 12, which equals then 54, okay? So if we take our 653, we divide it by 12 to get our 1 month of interest, it's 54. We write 54 down. We got a problem here, don't we? Because this number is increasing from this number. It's going in the wrong direction. So that means this isn't going to work, right? And the reason in this case it's not going to work is probably that interest rate, okay? However, if that interest rate were 24%, right? So just 5% difference, okay? If we take the and multiply it by 24%, right? So if we take our average, our 2,250, multiply it by 0.24, that equals 540. 540 then divided by 12 to get that 1 month of interest is 45. Well, if we look at that, we take our 1,500 plus our 1,450 plus our 40 or 45, that means 2,995. So in this example, this works, right? You can work this strategy if it's at 24%, but that wasn't the case, was it? It was at 29%. So what are your options? Well, we can use a different card and continue to make the minimum payments, or you can do what a lot of you smarties out there have done, and I'm impressed with you guys. You've called and asked for them to drop your interest. And guess what? These card companies want your business. They want it. So they most likely will work with you, okay? If you ask them nicely and you put that smile in your voice, right? And you ask them really nicely, they will probably work with you, okay? So if you get them to drop your interest, so again, call that card issuer and ask them, even if it's temporary, who cares? You're at least going in the right direction for a while, okay? And you can run that as your debt destroyer then potentially for a little while until that, interest rate changes. And then maybe at that point, you'll be in a different position with your credit score. And maybe you can get a 0% card. You can get a new card and put it on a 0% card, put it on a 0% balance transfer. Maybe you do that, right? So There are options. And I love the fact that you guys are starting to think outside the box. I'm seeing it every day and I'm getting emails on it every day. And it's exciting to me because we are not going to be chained anymore by traditional banking. We're not doing it. We're not going to let them win. We are going to win. We are going to keep our own money in our pocket and we are going to build our own wealth, right? So I'm so impressed with you guys. I love it. All right. So now, what are your statements going to look like, right? When you're doing velocity banking correctly, what are your statements going to look like? Now, this is an example of a student of ours that, took a balance transfer, okay? So she did a balance transfer and it was 10 grand. She threw 10 grand on a card that she had $0 on, but she used it as her debt destroyer, which is fine. You absolutely can do that, okay? You can do that. So let's take a look at what this looked like for her, okay? Because she called me scratching her head. She's like, Jen, I don't understand. She's like, I don't understand why I'm being charged interest on some of this. And I don't get it, okay? Well, some of you are already going to know the answer to that, but let's take a look, right? So so what your statement looks like, and will give you like that snapshot right on the front of the statement. It kind of gives you a quick snapshot. And so you've got your previous balance, you have your payments and your credits, you've got your purchases and adjustments, and then you've got fees and interest that's charged, okay? Remember, she did a balance transfer, 10,000, 0%. So her August is when she did her balance transfer, okay? And so she had, her balance was $10,327, all right? So her payments and credits were, so she put $3,400 on that card. She paid that as her credit, right? So her deposit. And then the purchases were $644. Whenever she did this, whatever time of month it was, because she started this month, right? So $644 were the purchases, all right? And she had interest charged of $1.25. Now, that might have been residual from the month prior to that. I'm not really sure. That could have been, but it also could have been something else. All right, so September then comes along and she now has a balance of $7,572. Her payments and credits were $6,900, okay, that she put against that card. And the purchases that she put on that card were $4,490, okay? So she's running it through as an expense card. And so the interest she was charged, and again, she's scratching her head over this, it's $21.34, okay? And so she's not really sure what's going on here. But good news is this, right? Look, her balance is going in the right direction. So she's doing her strategy properly, okay? So it's working. She's doing it right. October comes along and we're at $5,184. She then makes her credits, the account makes a payment of $5,200. And then her purchases were $3,938, right? Because these months she really starts getting into using it as an expense card, right? So she's using it for all of her purchases and all of her bills and all of that. All right, and then she's charged $28.56, okay? Now, November comes along and she now has $3,951 is her balance, right? Again, 10, 7, 5, 3. We're looking good. She's going in the right direction. The strategy works. Okay, so she makes a payment of $4,226, it looks like. And then her purchases are $3,408, okay? And then she has no interest charged on that month, okay? So here is what is happening, all right? So as you can see, for right here, her purchases are less than the amount that she's bringing in, right? So everything's kind of aligning right, and she doesn't have any interest that's being charged for that month. But here's what did happen, right? Because when you transfer a balance and you do a zero balance transfer, but you're then using it as your debt destroyer, okay? Because you're working down you're working down this card using it as a debt destroyer, totally fine to do. But you're going to be charged interest on the purchases that you make, right? So that 0% only applies to one bucket. And that bucket is that initial $10,000 that she did her transfer on. All right. So anything above and beyond that, you're going to get an interest charge for. And so that's more than likely what's happening here, right? And I'd really have to get into the statements. But when I, said that to her, she's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because then after that, there were some statements after that where she did have some zeros because she wasn't making, her purchases weren't as high as they had been. And so she's like, okay, well, this might make some sense here. So things to keep in mind while you're running your strategy, you guys, if you run into roadblocks, if you have some trouble with it, go back and watch videos. If it's still not clear to you, we are here, and I'm happy to help anybody that needs help with it, because I just want you to learn, and I just want you to be free and feel free once you get out of your debts. Have an amazing day. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you learned something today, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good one.